What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. So if you ask me, Austin, what is one of your most anticipated videos ever? I would say this one. This is my list of my top favorite directors working right now, and we'll get into the boundaries that I'm going to set for this video, and we're definitely going to have plenty of honorable mentions, but I love the concept, the idea, just everything about directing a movie. It's always been a passion of mine. It's always been kind of a goal of mine in the way far future, right? Obviously, right now I'm living in Kentucky. It's difficult to do things like that. But down the road, I want to be where some of these guys are. That's a big dream, but a lot of us have it because a lot of us are obsessed with films and filmmakers. And today I'm going to give you guys my 10 modern directors working right now, whether it's in their prime, just getting out of their prime, or filmmakers that are still doing it to this day, to this second. Now, I am setting those standards because to do an all-time list would take a lot of effort and a lot of movie watching that I want to get to eventually, absolutely, and talk about the Kubricks and talk about, heck, the Spielbergs, because his prime really was the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. But for this list, here's how I'm going to do this. Directors that are working right now, consistently putting out movies and have been doing it since 2000 is the year where I'm really going to start looking at the films that they've put out. And this is also not a list of who I think the best directors are, right? That's definitely going to be factored into the conversation, but these are my 10 favorite directors, something that they do, the way that they tell a story, the way that they incorporate cinematography. It speaks to me on just a different level. And the reason why I have so many honorable mentions is because there's so many directors that I want to talk about that are just doing consistent and great work right now. So that's why you're not going to hear some of those big-name directors. That's another list for another day, but we're talking the big guns, the big dogs of the 2000, 2010s, and now 2020s. We will see where things go for sure. But as I said, honorable mentions first. I need you in the comments down below. Who is your favorite director working right now? And if you enjoy these kinds of videos, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. Okay, honorable mentions. Now, where I start, you're probably going to laugh and be like, but look at my background. Look at what this channel is about sometimes, and that's comic book movies. And I just want to highlight really quick the Russo brothers. And I'm not saying they're on the filmmaking level as some of these other filmmakers, but to do what they have done in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is impressive. You look at movies like Civil War, Infinity War, Winter Soldier, which I believe is one of the best ones, and of course Endgame. It's really impressive how they shaped the Marvel Cinematic Universe and really sent it off into the future. My next honorable mention is Robert Eggers, a.k.a. the director of The Lighthouse and The Witch. I mean, this guy, he's only put out 2 movies of that caliber, in my opinion, but those are 2 really fantastic A24 horror films. He got very close to being on this list, but I need to see more from him to get to that level. Another director that I want to highlight is Jon Favreau, and you're probably thinking, Austin, Jon Favreau? But throughout the 2000s, you look at the differentiation of the movies that he's directed, from Elf to Iron Man to Jungle Book. And yes, you know, some of his films haven't worked to the degree that we want, like a Lion King, but then you look at the smaller films like Chef. So Jon Favreau is doing it right, and he's the executive producer of The Mandalorian, even though we're talking directing, so that's a different list. Next up is, I have Joel Coen pulled up because we have some brothers on this list. This is the Coen brothers. I think the Coen brothers are phenomenal. No Country for Old Men, one of my favorite movies of all time that you will see on that list. And then you have Oh Brother Art Thou. I mean, I haven't loved all of their movies. The directors that you see get really close to that top 10. Maybe there's 1 or 2 movies where I'm like, I don't love that. But I still really like all of their films, and I think they're brilliant writers and directors. Here's one that, you know, not enough people talk about. This is John Carney, the director of Begin Again and Sing Street. You guys hear me talk about Sing Street all the time. What John Carney does, getting his actors to portray these very different roles and stick to the tone of his movies, whether it's romance or highlighting the music or highlighting the dramatic. I mean, he's just such a good, solid director. Cannot wait to see what he does next, and he's making a splash in the TV world as well. Then we have Rian Johnson. I know what you're thinking, Austin. Rian Johnson? Listen. We're talking about Rian Johnson as a director. And I don't even want to bring up The Last Jedi because I don't want debate in this video. I do want debate. I want people to say who their favorite director is. But about Rian Johnson, I do not. Knives Out, Looper. 2 fantastic movies, 2 very different films. The guy is just so good in that territory, writing, directing. Can't wait to see what he does next. I just think he's really, really good. And then we have a director that, once again, not enough people talk about. This is S. Craig Zahler, who did Dragged Across Concrete, Brawl in Cell Block 99, and Bone Tomahawk. This guy is flying so far under the radar right now. It is honestly ridiculous, and it kind of hurts my soul. But I have liked to loved every movie he has done, and Dragged Across Concrete is one of my most underrated movies of last year, so I cannot wait to see what he does next. And then we have Greta Gerwig, and I never imagined loving her on the level that I did after seeing Lady Bird, because it's like, can she do this again? Can she capture this magic? Right, and we know she's an actor, we know, but making a splash like she has in the directing world after Lady Bird, and then what she did with Little Women, adapting that again with a new and fresh style and a great cast, and the way that she coordinates everyone involved with her films, man, I just think she's a great director, as well as Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele from Get Out to Us, and we know he's done a lot of writing, we know he's done a lot of acting, but Jordan Peele, the director, is what I want to continue to see flourish in Hollywood, so I can't wait to see what the guy does next. Only 2 movies thus far. Otherwise, I think he may have been even higher. Ryan Coogler is the next director that I want to highlight. Listen, I am the world's biggest Creed fan. I think Creed 1 is fantastic. I think Black Panther is such a well-directed movie. But then you look at a movie like Fruitvale Station and what he did with that film and breaking hearts left and right across the board. Ryan Coogler he's not even up and coming. He's a great director. I want him to do another dramatic movie and hit that really hard like he did Fruitvale Station, but right now, he's definitely up there for me. Then we have Yorgos Lanthimos. Yorgos Lanthimos, of course, the director of The Lobster and The Favorite, 2 movies that I think are great. Now, The Killing of the Sacred Deer didn't quite hit me as hard as I would want it to. If it was just those other 2 movies, I'd be like, oh yeah, he might be in the conversation. Definitely an honorable mention, but I want to see what he does next. And here is an underrated director that I just don't think enough people talk about. That is Gavin O'Connor, the director of Warrior, the director of The Accountant. This guy has such a distinct style, right? Warrior breaks your heart, but it's one of the best movies of its kind out there. And The Accountant, I know critics didn't love that movie, but I loved it, and it really spoke to me in a special way. So I really like this guy's style, and he has a movie coming out this year called The Way Back, and I cannot wait to see what he does with that. Alex Garland is the next director on my honorable mention. I have a lot of honorable mentions. The director of Ex Machina and Annihilation, a ridiculously well-written movie. He's also a phenomenal writer, and most of these directors are, right? When you're looking at IMDb, you're going to see writer just as much as you're going to see director, and that's the case for most of the ones that I've talked about so far. But in the directing category, Alex Garland knows sci-fi. And that is really important to me. Then we have Wes Anderson. We all know Wes Anderson. We all love his distinct style, the way he centers the characters, the way he moves the camera. It's just the most artistic director on this list. It's not everyone's style, for sure. I tried to get my wife to watch Moonrise Kingdom. We're going to have to try again. But she loved Isle of Dogs, so it's a very distinct thing that he does. But I really think it works well. And the last honorable mention, all right, I have another list here in just a second, is Jennifer Kent, because The Babadook is one of my favorite horror movies of the decade, and then The Nightingale is a very underrated film from last year that I thought was going to be a horror movie, but was really just an intense emotional thriller. I just think her style is great. I wanted The Nightingale to be phenomenal. I didn't think it was phenomenal, but I thought it was really well directed, and Jennifer Kent has the opportunity to make a major splash in Hollywood. Cannot wait to see what she does next. She is phenomenal. Now, the next 4 directors that I'm about to talk about, they all got this close to being in my top 10. And honestly, leaving some of them off hurt me. They're going to hurt you. You're going to see some of these names. You're going to say, Austin, what's wrong with you? And I would actually say a few of them would be in the best category, but once again, these are my favorites. I love them so much, but Paul Thomas Anderson is the first one. I know, guys, I know. The only reason I didn't put him in the top 10 is because I don't find myself anticipating his films to the level of some of these others. But The Master is phenomenal. There Will Be Blood is an all-time great film. You look at something like Phantom Thread, I thought it was really well done, but it didn't quite stick with me as much as I wanted it to. Inherent Vice, kind of the same way. But obviously, the films that I've already talked about, he's got some phenomenal, masterpiece-level movies. But he didn't quite make my top 10, as well as Sam Mendez, I can't believe after seeing 1917, he is not in my top 10 directors. Well, he got very close. You have a movie like Road to Perdition, which I just watched for the first time recently. It's phenomenal. Skyfall, one of the best Bond films. 1917. Y'all know how I feel about that movie. He's a great director. Deserves to come very close. And here's the biggie. I know, Bong Joon-ho. Austin, why is Bong Joon-ho not in your top 10 directors working right now? Well, here's why. I didn't love Okja on the level that I think some others did. I think Snowpiercer is great. Obviously, I think Parasite is a masterpiece. But for me, it's those two movies. Now, this could also be on me because I have not seen Memories of Murder, and I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about that film. Once I see all of his work, his entire body, he could easily move into that top 10. But from what I've seen right now, I have 10 more that are just slightly above him. But out of all of the directors on this list, I think Bong Joon-ho is one of my more interesting because he could end up being in that top 10, top 5 discussion if he makes another movie like Parasite. If he makes another movie like Parasite, I'm gonna have to build a statue of Bong Joon-ho outside of my apartment complex. I don't know if I can do that, but I will ask. Next up, and this one hurts my soul. I actually had James Mangold in the top 10 for a while. And this is probably my biggest honorable mention. And Austin, James Mangold? Really? Well, let's look at his body of work. I mean, this guy has directed a movie like Walk the Line, which is a completely different movie than something like Logan, which is a completely different movie than something like Ford v. Ferrari. And I haven't even brought up 3:10 to Yuma. I mean, James Mangold is ridiculous. And I want to say this is a tie for number 10, James Mangold and my next director. But it's so hard not putting him on here because I think he's so underrated. This is my number one underrated director in Hollywood. Everyone needs to be talking about James Mangold, yet they are not. He got very close to the top 10. He'll probably be in there eventually because I'll probably switch this tomorrow, but I love this guy so much. All right, so number 10, by the hair on my chest, which isn't much, it is Taika Waititi. I have this odd obsession with Taika Waititi, and I don't know if it's where I think he's just an awesome person or if it's where I have this strange anticipation for everything that he does, right? What We Do in the Shadows is a brilliant comedy. Hunt for the Wilder People is so emotional and subtle and hilarious at the same time. Thor Ragnarok is one of the most colorful, eccentric, zany, wacky, but hilarious Marvel movies I've ever seen. And Jojo Rabbit won him an Oscar, and I think it's a great movie. I mean, this guy is just a fantastic director. I cannot wait to see Next Goal Wins. I can't wait to see Thor Love and Thunder. I find myself anticipating his films more so than maybe some of the directors above him on this list. It's more of a, I want him to have more top-notch movies in my book. I think all of his movies are great, but I want one that just knocks it out of the park, kind of like a Bong Joon-ho. But I had to slip Taika Waititi in here, man, because he is just one, I say one to look out for, but he's an Oscar winner now. All right, this one may have some backlash because I know he's only directed 2 movies. But it's just something about his style for me. It's something about the way he goes about directing a horror film. Midsommar, Hereditary, this is Ari Aster. Ari Aster is unlike anything we've ever seen in the horror genre. I've never really, I've never paid attention to the style of a horror director like I have his, and upon rewatch, his movies tend to get better, especially Hereditary. I mean, Hereditary, the first time I saw, I'm like, yeah, that's really well directed. It's really good, but I don't know if it's... And I watch it again, I notice the subtleties, I notice the way he goes about his camera movements, the hints that he drops early on in his films that you just get so much out of upon rewatch. I know it's unconventional, but I get 1 or 2 on this list, right? Mine is Ari Aster. Man, what a phenomenal director. Then we have a director that just, he's so consistent. It's ridiculous how consistent Edgar Wright is. His movies are fantastic. Obviously, you have the Cornetto trilogy, which is one of my favorite trilogies, unconventional, of course, but one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Shaun of the Dead, one of my favorite movies of all time. And then you go on to do something like Scott Pilgrim versus the World? What? It's amazing, but it's just so different. And then Baby Driver, which is even more out of the box from what you expect from the guy. The Last Night in Soho, oh my gosh. I don't know what to expect from that film, but I know Edgar Wright is a top-notch director at this point, and everything he does, I'm going to anticipate with a fiery level that I could never fathom before I watched the Cornetto trilogy. So, Edgar Wright, another director that I just love so much, managed to accomplish in the 80s and the 90s, but to be where he is now, still in his prime. And that's the thing about this list. We're not counting what he did in the 80s and 90s, because I'm starting around the 2000s, but you still have movies like, obviously, the Kill Bill franchise, Django Unchained, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I was thinking, I'm like, some great Hateful Eight, it's good, there's some other ones on there, but it's like, Inglourious Basterds, how could I ever forget about that? And that's when he moved up even higher on the list. I'm like, oh God, Inglourious Basterds. Quentin Tarantino, nothing more I need to say. One of the directors that uses his name to promote his movies. One of the few that's working right now, so definitely high up on this list. And you all are going to kill me for putting these guys above Quentin, but we're talking directors that hit a soft spot in the soul and the body of Austin. And I'm not saying the Safdie brothers are better directors than what Quentin Tarantino is right now. No, don't mistake what I'm doing here. But I'm more interested in the Safdie brothers. I think I'm more intrigued by the Safdie brothers to see what they do next. And it could be where I feel like Quentin has given us the best we will see from Quentin. If he manages to top something like Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained and Pulp Fiction, then yeah, I bite my tongue. But the Safdie brothers, I feel like they just keep getting better. And if we're talking directors in their prime right now, I feel like we've yet to see what they can do. Even after seeing Uncut Gems, one of my favorite movies of last year, even after seeing Good Time, the movie that I've talked about, possibly more so than any other A24 movie up until Uncut Gems, of course, what they've done for A24, directing the highest-grossing movie that they had in Uncut Gems, and what they continue to do for actors like Robert Pattinson and Adam Sandler, yeah, man, these guys have a style that I never imagined myself gravitating towards. They're very close-up, they got the shaky cam down pat, and I'm just like, I normally don't like that. But I love what these guys do. And for some reason, it works so well for me. And that's why they're this high up on my list. You knew he'd be here, Martin Scorsese. Of course I'm talking Martin Scorsese. And, you got movies like Taxi Driver and Goodfellas. Goodfellas, one of my favorite movies of all time. But we're going to ignore those, and we're going to focus on the fact that this man is still putting out movies like Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman, and The Departed. How in the world is he still doing what he's doing? It's ridiculous. Martin Scorsese is unlike anything we've ever seen before, to be in his prime for 40 years. How? You would think he would slow down, and then he comes out with The Irishman. I don't know. And maybe we've seen the last great Martin Scorsese movie, right? I don't think we have. I feel like he's got more in him, and I can't wait to see what he does next. So this guy, I mean, we all know how great he is as a director, and he will definitely be on my all-time list, because once you factor in those other movies, my goodness, but yeah, he's number 5 on my list for a reason. Number 4, Damien Chazelle. Damien Chazelle has given me experiences in the theater that I just never, even First Man, right? I love First Man. I thought it was really great, but not a lot of people feel that way. Okay. But no one can take away the theatrical experience I had with the sound design and the music and the score and just everything about that movie worked very well. But that's not even on the level of his other 2 movies for me. La La Land is up here, and Whiplash is even higher. Whiplash is in my top 10 movies of all time. Oops, spoilers. But Damien Chazelle, man, what he does behind the camera, I mean, he just knows the swift camera movements, how he handles his actors, how he gets top-notch performances. Every single time, he turned Miles Teller's career around. And he gave J.K. Simmons an Oscar, basically Emma Stone. I mean, the guy is just fantastic, and everything he does I'm looking forward to. And that's the same case with David Fincher. David Fincher. And it's funny for David Fincher. Obviously, you've got The Social Network, a movie that I don't stop talking about. Zodiac, Gone Girl. I'm not allowed to talk about movies like Seven, but he's got Mank coming out this year, and it's, it's one that I read. I'm just like, and then I see David Fincher, and I'm like, oh, it's that name. But what put him over the edge for me and what put him this high on my list is Mindhunter. And I know every episode isn't directed by David Fincher, but he does the majority of the episodes, and he came up with Mindhunter. He produced Mindhunter. He wrote Mindhunter. And the flawless direction, the tone, the tempo set by his direction in the first few episodes of Season 1, yeah, I mean, that's what did it for a television show. Put David Fincher at number 3. on top of one of my favorite movies of all time, and The Social Network, and all these other films. So, yeah, a great director, one I tend to look forward to more so than some of these others. But let's get into number 2. The top 2 directors, and I can't believe I'm putting Christopher Nolan as my number 2 favorite director working right now in his prime. And he's still in his prime, and he still continues to do it. 2 of my favorite movies of all time, in The Dark Knight and Inception, but you keep going. Memento is brilliant. Interstellar gets better and better and better every single time that I watch it, and he's never really had a bust for me. I mean, a lot of people say Dark Knight Rises is a bust. I like Dark Knight Rises. I like Dunkirk, maybe not as much as some others like Dunkirk, but I think they're all just great. And he's got this distinct style, and it's the best balance I think I've ever seen from any director between blockbuster and independent movie. Because his films have this independent feel, but he gets these massive budgets and these massive stars, and everything he does feels epic. Inception, an Oscar-worthy movie, but it's also a blockbuster, and it made a ton of money at the box office. So it's crazy what he manages to do, and I know some people don't love Christopher Nolan. They're like, you millennials growing up with it. Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up with Nolan's movies. What do you expect me to say? He is the Spielberg of today. He is the Spielberg for people in their early 20s and guys and girls who grew up with his films, and I can't stop talking about the guy. Nolan hits me hard every time. And the fact that we have a movie coming from him this year in Tenet has me so excited. But that's not the only film we have coming this year. The other film we have coming this year is Dune. Dune is directed by Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve is my favorite director working right now. Austin, why is Denis Villeneuve better than Christopher Nolan? I'm not saying he's better. It's close, though. Right? 5 out of 5 for me. And I know he's directed more than 5 films, but I'm talking his American, more modern movies starting in 2013. Enemy, Prisoners, Arrival, Blade Runner, and Sicario. 5 out of 5. And all these other directors are like 5 out of 5, 6 out of 6, 6 out of 7. But it's not just, they're all good movies. I think they're all great to amazing to masterpieces. And he has multiple movies in my top films of all time. Arrival has moved so far up all of my lists. Prisoners is heartbreaking and emotional, and Hugh Jackman's best performance, in my opinion. Blade Runner 2049, there's no words to describe that film. I like it more than the original. Sicario ages so well. Just an intense and heartbreaking movie. Enemy, which is my least favorite of the 5, but every time I watch it, it gets better. I mean, Denis Villeneuve, you look at the way you feel when you're watching his films, and this is speaking upon my experiences, but I look at a movie like Arrival and how it builds tension so well with subtleties and not a lot happening on screen. Whereas Nolan is epic and crazy and blockbuster status, and Villeneuve is definitely directing movies that lend themselves to being blockbusters, but he also incorporates these very artistic and independent feeling elements that you just don't see. And both of my top 2 directors do that, but Villeneuve just goes about it in such a way that hits me really hard every time I watch his movie. And that's why Dune is just a tiny bit higher for my most anticipated. And it was a struggle coming up with who I love more, Nolan or Villeneuve, but I just looked at this year. It's like, which one am I looking forward to more? Well, it's Dune. I think that's because I like Villeneuve more. Both movies are probably going to be fantastic. But my goodness, guys, and I know I need to see Incendies. That's the one. People are like, Austin, you got to watch this film. I know, he's my favorite director working right now. But Denis Villeneuve is by far the most interesting director on my list. And it's also my favorite. It's also my number 1. So, wow, a lot of passion clearly went into this video. I think I talked a bit too long. Sorry for holding you guys, but I just appreciate you tuning in, joining me, having a lot of fun with me, talking directors, talking movies, everything we love doing on this channel. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to help it out by hitting that thumbs up button and leave your comments down below. I want to see your lists. I want to see your favorites and why and what movies of those directors are your favorites. More great things to come this week. I mentioned a Batman tier list that's coming. A lot of Netflix reviews, a lot of movie reviews, and one review coming later today. You guys are the best. I'll see you very soon.